Ever since Assassin's Creed 2 came out, I remember requests for Victorian London. I was among those waving the flag. My home rendered in the assassin way. It would be a dream come true. I waited, and with every year that passed, I felt a small tang of disappointment. We seemed only to venture further away. And then, it happened. Well, here we are. It happened. But I don't even remember the announcement. The prestige this franchise once held had been slain by Unity, and the reviews painted a mediocre picture. For the very first time in my life, I didn't buy the yearly Assassin's Creed. That story is one I believe I share with many. Before Odyssey, Syndicate was the ugly duckling of Assassin's Creed, or so the claims go. Those days were dark for the series. But if Unity found redemption in time, then maybe it's Syndicate's turn. To test that claim, we're gonna need to make it clear. These games are very different, and the competition doesn't start out in Syndicate's favor. Unity's Paris is the Mona Lisa of open-world cities. My opinion hasn't changed, it hasn't even been challenged. The graphical fidelity, the interior spaces, the detailing. Unity is on a level so higher than Syndicate, it's hardly comparable. It's easy to think the graphical downgrade isn't severe with a year's gap, but I had a day's gap. So it was night and day. By every objective measure, Paris is the better city. But a city is a place, and a place lives or dies on its atmosphere. There's nothing more subjective than that. There are times I was more in love with London than Paris, and that makes all the difference. Breathe it in. Smell that? Yeah, that's lung cancer. The smoke seeps into the sky like paint on a canvas, blood in the water. It's an ugliness to reflect the poison it is. But there's a strange comfort in this busy industrialism that we are lucky enough to experience today without the hell of working in it. Grey skies set a perfectly grim scene. Red at daytimes fit London's colour palette well. Green exudes a fitting sickness. And black, that's something new. This is the first game set close to when Howard Stark invented electricity, but with gas lamps everywhere the impression is close enough. It's the second game, however, to render 1-to-1 scale buildings. The size of London works with its technology. This is an intimidatingly industrialized place, and watching the cogs turn from the towering heights of London as winds whip past and a somber violin takes the background. It's a feeling no other game can match. Where Unity preferred to populate its streets with about 4 broken variants of indistinguishable peasant, Syndicate's advancement in terms of life is stunning. NPCs are fewer, but have never been so vibrant, performing all manners of work and play. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, the men!
Here, mate, you seen the Bertie Bever? Bertie Bever played for West Ham, 30 goals. Legend! Yeah, I've seen it, mate. Sunshine, innit? Funshine. Do it up the bumshine. You come down the river Friday night, mate, 5 o'clock. Yeah, I see you there, 4 o'clock, mate. Work through lunch, 4 o'clock. Yeah, nice one. See you there. Apples and bananas, 2 for £1.
The women.
A woman? A bloody woman? Where did you get that idea? Your mum's a woman.
And the working class scum. Oppression has to end. Those were the words stamped in steel at the end of Syndicate's trailer, so it seems only appropriate that we'd begin our time with Jacob and Evie Fry liberating the working class scum in Crawley. The fundamentals of the time period are neatly displayed like exhibitions in this industrial museum, as you make your way past child workers and battered men operating unsafe mechanoliths, learning the basics of parkour, combat, stealth, and assassination as you close into the target. A strong start, but if anything surprises me, it's not the visuals. It's the contrast between this grim setting and the bizarrely upbeat tone. Jacob and Evie are jokers, as chummy as siblings are today. Neither, including the straight shooter Evie Fry, appear to take the situation seriously. She may have a plan, but she remains perfectly calm while she banters with her brother and mentor. Even the music, though incorporating periodic instrumentation, is weirdly happy for a setting that sweats and bleeds the exploitation of every single fucker in it. The best way of understanding Syndicate's introduction is thinking in terms of Alzheimer's disease. It takes this morbid progression down the IQ spectrum from beginning to end, and it didn't exactly start out sparring with Einstein. Rather than Unity's elegance, drama, and intrigue with Jacques de Molay, Syndicate opts for an utterly soulless cutscene introducing an utterly dull premise. The assassins have tracked Abstergo to London. Oh, I guess they must be on the trail of a piece of Eden. Now watch Sean and Rebecca, who haven't been fun since 2010, display the exact same personality quirks you've seen them display every single time they've appeared in franchise history. The Templars are after a piece of Eden, guys. A piece of Eden. Well, bugger me. I can't believe it took them 9 mainline entries for the story to involve a piece of Eden. The disease progresses, and this sickness is terminal. Just like Waterloo. London is a Templar fortress as it has been for 100 years, so the twins are going to need one hell of a motivation to try liberating it alone. Any guesses? The tragic death inspiring revenge routine. Maybe an unjust imprisonment a la Darksiders. Come on, man, we're doing it for the clout. Jacob's tired of being irrelevant, and hey, liberating London would be really cool. Evie considers that for a moment and unequivocally agrees. Why not? Do it for the clout, bro. I guess I've got dementia too now because I'm lost for fucking words. How? Oh god. They decided to go headfirst into the most powerful city in the world, owned by the most powerful people in the world, after a lifetime of patience for the Vine. Dude. No, 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 no! They can't keep getting away with it! The claim that Syndicate's intro was cobbled together is the only thing I can imagine to explain its shocking writing. But it wasn't, because visually it's the best work in the entire game. The ball Unity past has been dropped so far it's actually reached terminal velocity. Well, with the class divide being so apparent, at least it belongs in the same generation as Unity. Syndicate of course takes place nearly 100 years after the French Revolution, so you see your expected advance in technology. You'd expect the exact same for a video game released a year after as well, wouldn't you? Sorry to disappoint. But let's open on a high note. Stealth. Kidnapping puts the power of prostitutes into your own hands, which is a sentence I never expected to say, has multiple interpretations, and yet only means this: fully controllable social stealth. You can bring Avatar: The Last Airbender with you, which feels distinctly assassin, and works fantastically as a high-risk, high-reward strategy. The skill here is weaving this detection circle out of range, but with consistent escape attempts to curtail, it's not as easy as it looks. I'll tell you what does look easy. Being remotely consistent at all? Apparently not, because according to Ubisoft, going back to only one equipable tool at a time was a great idea. This actively discourages synergetic item usage, but hey, in the name of balance, they've also broke consistency with being broken. Syndicate works. The cover system is intuitive and snappy, the UI is smooth and fast, kidnapping is consistent, and enemies can't see you through cover anymore. It's certainly not immersive like Unity, but having an assassin that follows your instructions makes all the difference. This is one of the best iterations of stealth the series has ever seen, and you'll be grateful for it, because stealth is a damn sight better than the alternative: combat. Regressing from Unity, you have no attack variety. It's one button, no combos, no choices. Also used to be that you could parry and open a window for a counterattack if timed perfectly, but Syndicate continues its regression with a bog-standard press button to avoid damage system. In a small moment of innovation, enemies do have a brand new defensive stance that requires a specific button to break. If you don't, you'll take a damage penalty, so you have to be thinking fast. Fast. That's the word. A complete inversion of its predecessor. It's also partly how this game makes the most generic combat system yet challenging. The best comparison for Syndicate isn't any previous entry, or for that matter, any entry to come. It's Guitar Hero. You have 3 relevant buttons whose inputs you must manage at speed, and to fail is directly punished. Speed is this game's logical counter-argument to its stunning lack of options in combat. Though being closer to Arkham than Assassin's Creed, we lack Batman's freedom. You can't ground enemies, you aren't rewarded for perfect timing, you can't use any tool besides the gun, you can't use environmental objects, you can't stun, you can't cooperate with your sibling, in the game marketed on cooperating with your sibling, you can't spend combos on special moves, and that's because meaningful combos don't even exist. Continuing the metaphor, Syndicate is to Arkham what Guitar Hero is to an actual guitar, and that's just the man in the cape. Both games have you beating the piss out of the working class scoundrels, but I guess insanity leads to a little more imagination, because Syndicate has next to no enemy variety. Gunners exist, but they add nothing to combat. There's a tougher blighter much later in the game, but they only attack faster. You're left with the same enemies with the same tricks every fight. In a quick comparison to Unity, brutes couldn't block, but resisted staggering strikes. Pikemen could block, and countered staggering strikes. Agiles had a combo, rolled, and escaped damage while grounded. All of them had a unique unblockable attack. Syndicate doesn't have any unblockable attacks. This Fisher-Price Arkham spin is noteworthy only in that it's such a shockingly disappointing regression. Speed keeps the fight alive. If it were any slower, the shallowness would tear the system to shreds. Some might appreciate Syndicate for returning to Assassin's Creed's signature rapid bursts of decisive violence. It's certainly closer to the series standard than Unity, but I don't remember Ezio stabbing a man 60,000 times for the kill. Now we have to talk about intrinsic motivation. That's the way combat changes according to your very subjective drive to look cool doing it. At its best, you'll be hopping from carriage to carriage, bringing the cinematic chase to life with unmatched flair, and keeping it that way, as the AI does an admirable job of driving itself while you're, eviscerating your foes. I've yet to read a negative review that doesn't bring up how slapstick it appears to be. I quote, "It's like stabbing a man to death with your car keys. They're swinging their arms around on fast forward. It's like being mugged by a house cat. That way, it ends up looking ridiculously excessive. By the time you put an underleveled thug down, you've slit his throat 3,000 times and carved the Magna Carta into his nutsack. By the time you've put an overleveled thug down, I'm surprised he's even recognizably human. The reason there are no swords in Syndicate is because of the times. Police patrol these streets, so you need to conceal your weapons. This doesn't quite match the Victorian subtlety. And concealed carry is an excuse that only works for so long. Of all Black Flag's content, one of my greatest irritations was that they only bothered with 3 weapon types. It felt chokingly restrictive, and then because we've upgraded to ongoing asphyxiation. Of our 3 weapon types, there are now no meaningful differences between any of them. They amount to nothing more than animation sets, and unlike the Kenway games, you can't switch between them mid-fight to keep things fresh. You also can't disarm enemies, which on occasion brought Black Flag's 3 up to a potential 6. Not in Syndicate. Here, we're stuck with what we've got. On the upside, the environmental incorporation of combat animations is a valuable asset. Combat is frequently more brutal and immersive thanks to how beautifully the assassin will use walls or ledges in their attacks. You've also got 2 execution animations for quick shotting out of a break defense, and best of all, multi-kills. Like Unity, Syndicate has near-death states. If you bring 2 or more enemies down to that state within vicinity, you're in with a chance of an absolutely tantalizing takedown. These sit firmly in the intrinsic category as they're technically a waste of time, but setting them up requires a little more cognition than the Guitar Hero routine, and that is praiseworthy. Yes, they only work half the time because the aforementioned vicinity is about as consistent as my nan's mashed potato, but this is Syndicate, go easy on it, it's trying its best, okay? To what extent I can blame the new customization for Syndicate's weapon types, I don't know. The designs look cool, but the perfection of Unity's modular, varied, and yet entirely assassin outfit customization tragically goes unreplicated to this day. Syndicate is more comparable to the Ezio games, with colors, capes, and a handful of base robes to choose from. I have to reserve my complaints for the regression, but judged in its own light, I'm actually quite positive on this selection. This is subjective as it gets, but I love nearly every item in the wardrobe, and I genuinely had a blast playing around with Eevee's glamour like a beauty YouTuber, only with brutal violence and actually, yeah, like a beauty YouTuber. Syndicate so far has dealt in regressions and inversions that behave like regressions. Next up is another progression regression with a side of depression. Please make your impressions on the level up screen. It's boring. The upgrades are stat boosts. There is nothing meaningful here. It has the benefit of not keeping you from any abilities early game, which might be annoying on repeat playthroughs of a game like Unity, but the disadvantage of being a waste of time. Progression in Syndicate translates to you can now fight enemies with a higher number above their heads, where progress in Paris was expressed both visually and mechanically. The biggest gatekeeper to fighting high-level foes isn't health in Syndicate, it's damage, so you're going to need to get those level ups to be able to access weapons of satisfactory power. But here's the thing, weapons are level gated, and in Syndicate, you don't get skill points for leveling up. You get level ups for assigning skill points. So what that means is, you need to assign skill points if you want to keep buying better weapons. And what that means is, by level 8 you will have no choice but to invest points in health and defense, because there'll be nowhere else to spend them. I like to play with self-imposed health restrictions to make the combat more challenging in a fun way. I can feel like an assassin by playing the glass cannon. I've done this in nearly every game I've covered until now, because I can't. Previous entries don't force you to upgrade one thing if you'd like to upgrade another. Instead, they used crafting systems that tied specific upgrades to meaningful gameplay. Could have sworn there was this game, Flak Bag or something, that had this nailed years before Syndicate came out. On that note, Syndicate's disease changes from Alzheimer's to ALS in this context, but there's a clinical case of Muppetry afoot too. Unity's parkour animations, remember them? Be hard not to. They're Unity's most iconic and revered feature. So, in a stroke of genius, Syndicate decided to remove them. It doesn't replace them with anything, there's no rhyme or reason. The skeleton of the free run up and down system is the exact same, it just looks worse. We've kept the bones, but lost the flesh. Half this mystery is something for the philosophers, and I don't mean Reddit, but the other half can be pinned on London itself. There kinda has to be some ropes for the rope swing animation to happen. I don't buy necessity. If Unity's animations were made for Paris's environments, then Syndicate could have innovated for chimneys and carriages. It seems like a surface-level problem, but intrinsic motivation, that being the drive to look cool, brought Unity's movement depth to addicting heights. What we're left with is vault animations and the roll you can get if you mash free run down on impact. Fantastic. The parkour is gutted this way, but make no mistake, this is a mummification in process. Remember how in Unity you could choose between the climb leap for distance and standard scaling for precision? Climb leap is now your only option. Remember how in Unity, free run up doubled as a jump button? That made sense, jumping and going up go hand in hand. In this game, however, free run up doubles as a low self-esteem button. Pretty innovative, because each time you press it, you'll realize the developers are in essence insulting you with what they've done here. You can't jump. It's an Assassin's Creed game, and you can't jump. Turns out we can't have shit and we're not even in Detroit. Well, hey, at least you can't commit suicide. Can I just point out that The Last of Us 2, a game that had the gall to advertise a manual jump button like they were leading us into a brave new world of game design, has its ridiculousness validated by Assassin's Creed, a franchise built on freedom of movement lacking that fundamental feature. 1 year before this abominable decision, you could significantly increase the efficiency of your route by jumping at the appropriate time. You could leap straight off buildings if you were willing to risk the health loss. You could even use it to flow into parkour objects that you couldn't in any other way. Vast levels of depth, basic freedom, and they've just removed it. Why? When a decision makes me speechless, usually there's some terrible explanation for it, but this is the piece de resistance. Never before have I seen a design choice sacrifice more for absolutely nothing in return. The next nail in the foot presumably can't be intentional, but its weight is felt on the depth all the same. In both games, especially on PC, getting your assassin to go exactly where you want can be troublesome. Both games have contextual techniques like side ejects whose contexts aren't always easy to read, and Unity at least featured needless automation in its jump. You should be able to predict the distance and destination of a jump input, not in Unity. Sometimes you'd break the long jump world record, other times you'd gravitate to a lower point on the same building. Syndicate has fixed the automation by amputating the mechanic and doubled down on pretty much everything else. Getting Jacob or Evie to go exactly where you want them to is like neurosurgery with a spoon. It doesn't happen. This makes going for beautiful jump sequences a complete shot in the dark. That is, in the times you'll even have an opportunity to try. London's streets are far less complex. There is usually but a single pathway adjacent to a building, but these break so often that keeping the flow going for long is nearly impossible. The contextual side ejects I previously mentioned no longer have context. There is about one building type I could point to where getting these is consistent. Otherwise, it's hopeless. They'll either simply fail to perform it or they'll climb up to the top instantly. Contextual wall ejects are handled differently though. They're picked up and fed into a wood chipper. Even on jumps you could clearly make, the game will continually refuse to perform them. So it's a complete shot in the dark, whether you'll be able to move or you'll be stuck there like a buffoon shaking your head, because the game has decided you need to comply with health and safety regulations. Sorry Ubisoft, next time I'll try not to run in the corridors. Worse animations, terrible tracking and lacking environments collectively compose the trifecta of shit that kills Syndicate's intrinsic depth. The extrinsic was dead as soon as they pried out the jump. If Unity is the Olympics of movement, then Syndicate is a care home sports day. It feels like I've lost a limb. Ubisoft knows it, so they've given you a new one. After having completely butchered the parkour, the rope launcher removes any impetus to use it. The effects of this are drastic. For one, say goodbye to any sense of vertigo. Getting from 10 meters up to 100 can be done in 5 seconds. And that way, there are no more puzzle climbs, no buildings that require a moment's thought to pathfind. A grapple gun a la Batman makes escape from tough encounters trivial, so running away is no longer a part of gameplay. And of course, there's simply less to do. Parkour is ashes, but it remains at the very least an interactive process. Pressing a single button is literally the minimum viable product for this to even be considered gameplay. Keep in mind that even if you could excuse a London baron of parkour objects for the sake of realism, that depth loss could have easily been made up for with this. It wasn't. Instead, rope launcher dependent syndrome simply takes shallow as a puddle and turns it into a thin veneer of condensation. The pervading response to this seems to be that Victorian London sparsity makes it an incompatible setting for Assassin's Creed. It should never have made it past the drawing board. Considering what's been done to Unity systems thus far, I'm not particularly confident that this realization of the rope launcher was constricted by necessity, or even a fraction as good as it could have been. Seems like Batman is the one Ubisoft took inspiration from. The grapple hook is the obvious mechanical comparison. You can cancel ziplines in Syndicate, and if you time those drops to land on a carriage, you're immune to fall damage. The ridiculousness of this says it's probably not intentional, but mistaken depth is depth all the same. Vertical vehicle grapples didn't get the memo. When you hit that rope button, it's a signed contract. You can't move at all until the process finishes. Cancelling, of course, encourages some level of thought in when to end a grapple. It allows you to redirect your climb mid-ascent, and you can even use the leftover momentum to your advantage. In Syndicate, that could have been a climb leap, and you'd have to time a grab input to catch a higher ledge. What I'm trying to say is, Assassin's Creed needs cancel culture. Given the abseil-like nature of these grapples, it seems restrictive that you can't control when the assassin makes the jumps in sequence. This was an opportunity for a timing challenge. Speed could be enhanced by mastering pace. Different superheroes bring different ideas, and Spider-Man suggests the ability to pause while hanging, so you could survey your surroundings and select another grapple point. Spider-Man also made inverted assassinations a spectacle to behold, but that could only exist in a world where the rope launcher had any combat utility at all. A world, for example, where previous games in the same franchise already had rope tools that already did have combat utility. The inability to go down in any sense is especially confusing given the process this resembles. You can't abseil with the abseiling mechanic. To make more abstract suggestions, the logical place to draw inspiration from would be Syndicate's trailer. First, we'll need to steal, rob, unashamedly plagiarize The Last of Us 2 for its groundbreaking jump feature, then combine it with non-contextual rope launches. Currently, you can only grapple with your feet planted, just one context. But imagine if you could throw yourself off a building and rope launch before you fall. Wouldn't you do it for the spectacle alone? Making a choice in the heat of the moment is guaranteed to be engaging. A similarly badass expression could be a pendulum motion. You would hook ahead and to the edge of the current building, drop alongside, and swing like a wrecking ball down to a lower point. It's a shame London so gravely lacks interior spaces, because I certainly think ziplining from window to window and running straight through the buildings in between would breathe life even into the current incarnation of traversal. If you're still not convinced, consider this. The Thames is a proof of concept. It's an alarmingly vast river, and swimming was already boring enough in Paris's thin counterpart. This was a massive problem to overcome, one that required a nigh-perfect solution, and Ubisoft found it. Running in alternate directions, you'll find ships. Among them is floating debris to hop along, and upon them are activities with which to distract yourself. You are being constantly distracted and constantly challenged to make choices as various boats move to and away from your destination. If Frogger had knife crime, this would be it. I consider it a perfect example that a challenging environment to adapt for Assassin's Creed is not an impasse. In the same way the Thames was a foreboding problem, London was too. Both could have worked. It's a shame that in the end, only one did. The game does what it can with what it's got, but the Thames represents more still, because I also consider it a microcosm of Syndicate's secret weapon. One of Syndicate's distinguishing features is gang liberation. You lead the Rooks, but London is owned by the Templars' Blighters. Every couple blocks is controlled by a central stronghold, whether that be a factory of child workers, a specific target to kill, or a gang war to finally settle things. The twins being the agents of the gang revolution, it's you who hijack convoys of cargo, plunder ships, and rob trains. It's true, all of London is sparse, but with the rope launcher, you travel through it quicker than ever. Consider then what a journey may entail by spinning up the plates and dispersing them through the map. The lightning-quick movement has London's quirks and distractions come at you just as fast. Consider too the effect of the rope launcher on stealth. How quick and precise encounters become when you can create your own zip lines. You're left with a non-stop flow of nearly every facet of gameplay, so what fun can be extracted from their shallowness is densely packed. Syndicate is a rare example of shallow gameplay, supported on a bed of pacing and distribution. In Unity, the gameplay was strong enough that the missions didn't have to do a great deal of heavy lifting to work. Syndicate certainly does, and it certainly does. Sequence 4, I had to chase down a boat against the clock. I had to damage my carriage just enough to intimidate a passenger, and a short while after I was having a shootout with Evie before leaping onto a moving train. Sequence 5, Evie's second missions. In 10 minutes you've zipped atop a gargantuan monument, solved a London-wide mystery, climbed St. Paul's Cathedral, done a cool little rotating cogs puzzle, and battled to the death with Lucy Thorne. Meanwhile, Jacob's missions involved a charismatic businesswoman, a carriage chase, a sabotage, a jailbreak from a police convoy into a balls-to-the-walls train robbery. The game does not understand the meaning of slow burn, but it sure as shit knows how to have fun. An idea that is far from exclusive to London. People reference Edward Kenway's mansion all the time, and for good reason. It's something out of a superfan's wildest dreams. Characters are flamboyant and charismatic. Dialogue is colourful and yet straight to the point. You'll even find the odd twist and turn, working for Pearl Attaway, only to find out she's Templar Prime the whole damn time. This is a new strategy for Assassin's Creed, and I only have praise for being concise, but unfortunately, there's a reason Assassin Christmas is a meme, at the game's expense. Syndicate is more than willing to contrive anything necessary to get things moving. You just happen to find Clara O'Day, an established character outside Lambeth Asylum when you visit, which just happens to lead 10 seconds later to a meeting with Florence fucking Nightingale. When I say you run into Charles Dickens, I mean it. You collide with the fucker 5 minutes after the title drop. And something similar happens for Darwin. Though, I couldn't much tell the difference. The game's idea of being eccentric is flailing your arms about and being socially awkward, traits repeated among both the Chuckle brothers and Alexander Graham Bell. They're left with the exact same charisma. It's odd. And so not surprising when Syndicate, supposedly set in a tense period of human suffering, falls down the slippery slope of lightheartedness, desecrating any shred of believability in the name of comedy on the way. Mrs. Disraeli is the Prime Minister's wife, an upstanding woman I expected. I welcomed being proven wrong, but not for long. Mrs. Disraeli is a fully rigged basket case who carries around a funny little handbag dog called Desmond. Wow, nice one guys. When's the Deadpool crossover? You end up having to rescue her from a mugging, only to find the blighters sat down, receiving a therapy session. Yeah, that seems likely.
Here, have a sweetie.
The characters are sterilized to fit an unbelievable light-hearted caricature of themselves. It applies to nearly every celebrity, but no one suffers more than the twins. Brother being a reckless psychopathic comedian and sister managing to make whinging about everything from the sun to the earth completely dull. That's my job, Evie. Jacob's the foil, Evie's the straight man. These roles define the characters down to the bone. It's a one-dimensionality that only shows cracks in the game's final hours. Shallowness diseases the pair, but the comedic roles they occupy also conflicts with the world itself. London howls in horror as the children toil away. It can be a grim place, and yet our main characters remain childish. Being fun in a tough time can often work fantastically. There's this game called Black Flag, but that remained believable. Syndicate? Not so much. The Mary Poppins routine doesn't work for Assassin's Creed. You sap drama and suspense from a dramatic, suspenseful, and occasionally thought-provoking universe. Jacob spends half the game tearing down British institutions without a second thought, and all he gets is a slap on the wrist, as if it's all just a trivial joke. Hey Evie, I know I almost collapsed the economy of the British Empire, but what do you call a person that has 2 butts and kills people? An ass in. Get it? Yeah, bet you don't, fucking virgin. The Thames holds yet another secret for us to uncover. This time, it's a gateway. Something placed it there, beckoning your approach. You head through, and come out the other side 50 years into the future, at the height of World War I. This is Syndicate's version of Unity's Helix Rifts, a future image of the city you play in with a helping of extra content. But Lydia Fry also contributes a narrative, and the epitome of my point. This isn't Victorian London, this is World War I, a horror so monstrous it's difficult to even conceive. Boys as young as 16 were, over a 4-year period, and by all means, forced into Inferno. Are jokes off limit? Of course not. Should Assassin's Creed, a series that used to take itself seriously, and successfully so, have Lydia Fry as devil may care about the war to end all wars as she is, sarcastically chirp around with Winston fucking Churchill? No! She's an assassin! Why isn't she doing everything she can to bring Winnie into the fold? What makes her think there'll even be a Britain after this war? Why in the fuck did her husband get conscripted, as if the assassins would ever go willingly or couldn't figure out a way to dodge the draft? I'm sure glad the Syndicate writers never got their hands on World War II, or we'd be exchanging dank memes with Anne Frank. Syndicate's tone consistently works to undermine itself, and though some of the jokes may be entertaining, I find myself actively taken out of the setting by the ridiculousness of it all. It's entertaining, but not believable. It's fun, but ultimately shallow. I now hope to actively take you into my review of the side content. Call me Shammy, because all of that was just a segue. Actually, don't call me Shammy. Call me Neil Druckmann, because I just subverted your expectations. Kinda like World War I. There's something magical about finding a hidden treasure, like Archdragon Peak in Dark Souls 3. and this curious time portal is no different. Syndicate's 1916 will never fail to amaze me. At least when no one's talking, the atmosphere is nigh perfect. You're looking at an all-new skybox in a district of London completely adorned with World War I assets. They could have convinced me this was a full game, they even gave it its own landmark. The scale of Tower Bridge is intimidating, exactly as it should be. Following Lydia's spectacular opening, Winston gives you the lay of the land. There are 6 targets to conquer the district. Better get cutting. Each of the following spy hunts have unique objectives. For some, it's an assassination. For others, it might be theft. Each will have a fairly engaging optional objective like blowing up the spy's equipment, and each will be rounded off with some cool lore. Good stuff. Fantastic stuff would be the entirely new mechanics we've got to play with. Sadly, Lydia's a carbon copy of Evie, but we do have searchlights that'll expose you to sniper fire if caught, and electricity generators that you can power down as a way to distract the guards. World War I is shockingly well made, almost a match for how well it's contextualized. That person beckoning you towards the portal, person's not the right word. It's Juno. As you kill your way closer and closer to the final spy in London, Juno explains her return and argues that it was the greatest assassin of our generation who freed her, so by all means, we should not be working against her. Her presence becomes clear when you uncover the spy master's identity, Juno's perpetually reborn husband, the Sage. Just like Bartholomew Roberts, just like John Standish, just like Francois Germain. This is him, risen again, and now dead again. I guess we avenged Elise twice now. Nice one, Ubisoft. I take back like 3% of what I've said so far. Now, back to the sweatshop, boys. I always meet people aspiring to be a YouTuber, and what I usually say to them is, I'll have a Big Mac and a Pepsi, please. I stole that joke from Jimmy Carr. But thankfully, both of us can fix our problems with Skillshare. From art to business, writing to productivity, Skillshare has it, in a curated, streamable, quality-assured package. Wow, maybe God is real. Adobe need not be so tough when finding a decent teacher isn't either. But when Geordie Vanderput teaches a man where the keyframe button is in Premiere Pro for beginners, he'll wish he hadn't spent the past 4 years editing like a preschooler. Now look at me. With a silver play button, I'm the most desirable bachelor in London. Oh, sorry guys, that's Taylor Swift on the phone, but don't forget, for a limited time, use the link in the description to get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. After that, it's less than $10 a month. Sadly, Ubisoft went with a rather different Skillshare system, so instead we'll have to do the liberation activities. Hungry Santa would be proud. These are Syndicate's answer to Unity's social club missions, standard gameplay encounters just without the need to accept a quest. You have an arena, you have targets, begin the hunt. It's hard to define what are essentially enemies in a location as side content at all, and that's fine by me. A 50-cent development cost is likely why there's so many, but don't be concerned. You only need to liberate 3 districts to keep the story moving. Otherwise, the gang war between the Rooks and Blighters is entirely hollow. You don't help or change London in any meaningful way. You don't progress in any meaningful way. The Rooks contribute nothing beyond hired help, which is doubly useless because it implies you'd need help to begin with. Gangs are yet another feature that was supposed to distinguish Syndicate, that ends up being almost entirely superficial. But Britain's also known for its celebrities, and Syndicate's Parallel to Paris stories takes an according approach. Instead of a unique concept for each entry, London stories are a handful of quest chains, each based on one historical figure. People like Charles Darwin, a complete idiot, who in 1868 thought we evolved from gorillas even though Harambe was still alive. Queen Victoria, who wouldn't want a shitty joke written about her. And even Duleep Singh if you buy the last Maharaja DLC. You'd sure hope India are good at diplomacy after being invaded by the French, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Arabs, the Dutch, the Danish, the Mongols, the Portuguese, the Persians, the Turks, the Greeks, and currently the British. The sequences for each of these figures start with full cinematics, giving you the impression that the following installments would have a similar production value. But the disappointment is handily offset by the sheer quality of what's on offer. All of them incorporate a unique concept, like a Templar disguised as a civilian who betrays you at the final moment, and most of them incorporate a unique gameplay scenario. Get to the docks before the enemy, you start at different locations, chase a guy through a chaotic London, tackle him out of the way of a train. None of these creative situations would feel out of place in a main mission. It's the lower budget that distinguishes the two, and that works for me. They've taken the quality over quantity approach, 23 for Unity's 50. And in place of Unity's murder mysteries, we now have Dreadful Crimes. Dreadful because they were cut out and sold back as DLC. Worth the price? Well, the distinguishing feature is the way everything is presented. The floating text mimics BBC's Sherlock almost exactly, and with Jacob's huntsman outfit to complete the set, I have no doubt that's what they were going for. You certainly feel the part walking into a high-profile murder through a large crowd and a police perimeter. I'd say quality over quantity, but there are no fewer here than there were in Unity. And yet, every crime has an interesting premise or twist. These are intriguing mysteries. I love the Sweeney Todd reference, with people appearing ground up in various products in a barber named Feeney Sod, which was remarkably subtle. The most hated man in London has you use maths with time schedules to deduce which of 5 murder weapons was the one that killed him, or the man in the locked room. Byron Kashan dead. And yet, there's no murder weapon. There wasn't even an entry. Locked window, locked door. From the looks of it, Kashan was a critic. Rather than playing Mendelssohn, the strings fought with him. In particular, the solo performed by the first violin was a disaster. The gentleman is better equipped to perform in London's sewers. Fuck, that's a good one. I should write that down. I would advise anyone who has contemplated attending to instead remain quietly at home. God damn, first Evie stealing my job, now him. According to the editor, his especially negative critiques bring in the views, so keep 'em coming, and more than likely he was killed for it. Hang on a minute. Is this a threat? By far the greatest strength of the crimes is the way they present so many possibilities, and by far the greatest weakness is the way one of them is so often blatantly true. By such a wide margin, it completely undermines the point of conflicting evidence. In Professor Bing's double murder, his mate Silas is the only one who knows about the African brain-eating rituals that were clearly performed on the body, and he specifically mentioned lost glasses, kinda like the glasses found at the scene of the murder. There's no point in giving me a decent red herring in the form of the supposed gold digger Virginia, if one solution is so overwhelmingly obvious. Similar issues exist for the critic, even though there's a love triangle, cheating, and so at least 2 men have motive enough to kill Kashan. One of those men has means, motivation in the form of the orchestra his reviews happen to sync, and the murder weapon practically sitting in his apartment. By making the solution this obvious, you ironically murder the mystery. You've told me the answer, and so it can't be rewarding when I accuse the correct suspect. Thankfully, most of the 10 crimes avoid this problem. I'd love to go into more specifics, but if I do that, I'll ruin it for anyone who wants to give them a go. It's a crime in itself that Syndicate gated among its best content and the most interesting detective work in the franchise behind a DLC, whose release date alone makes it likely half the people won't try it. If it isn't terribly placed icons, it's a price tag. In Syndicate, it's both. Train robberies, boat heists, cart escorts, cargo hijacks, do these sound fun to you? They sound fun to me, I want to rob a train. But of all those activities, every single fucking one of them will not appear until you visit Ned Winnett's first activity icon on the map. It took me until Sequence 7 before I knew all of this side content even existed, simply because I hadn't thought to visit a seemingly innocuous N icon. Something similar happens for fight clubs and carriage races. One icon pertaining to an insignificant character, Robert Topping, happens to hide fight clubs and races. How could I have even guessed that? Topping is an especially terrible case, because fight clubs are undermined even if you visit him the instant he appears on the map. That'd be Sequence 4, despite the fact that there are multiple clubs rated at level 2. You'll punch through these like a bullet through paper with the smallest possible disparity. So imagine how dull they can be if you found them any later. For me, it was level 8. Sad times. But about here was when the game makes its first attempts to specialize the 2 assassins. Only Evie can access the best stealth upgrades like stronger throwing knives and the ability to bend light around her, while only Jacob can access the best combat ones like punching harder and punching even harder than that. The funniest thing about this is that the system completely prevents you from doing this yourself. Were you allowed to level up independent of skill points, you could simply choose to invest nothing in Jacob's stealth and Evie's combat, thereby creating potent specialization DIY. Though that implies I'd want Jacob to be the brawler and Evie to be the shadow. Why can't you choose? Jacob is more than willing to employ stealth. In fact, he makes the most spectacular displays of it. One is reckless, one is cautious. That doesn't mean Jacob would prefer combat over stealth. And with only Evie having access to the nanosuit, it's hard to avoid the conclusion that she's objectively the best assassin. It wouldn't be controversial to suggest that most people resort to combat only when they fail stealth. But then consider this. Combat with a strong weapon and a health upgrade could be done by a clicker bot. Jacob's final combat abilities simply make overpowered more overpowered. Stealth, however, is a far more complex process, with different arenas interacting with different enemies each time. If you're going for Ghost, and you probably are, Evie's stealth Stealth 3 affords similar benefit to a tougher process, and so she is fundamentally the better choice. This imbalance is noteworthy, but it's far from catastrophic. Almost everyone will pick the assassin they like best regardless, and I was lucky. I like Evie. What might have convinced me to switch more would be some level of visual distinction in fighting style. Both assassins rob Arno stealth kill animations, which would have been acceptable for parkour because it's a complexly animated process. Stealth kills aren't, they're a single animated routine. This hilariously leaves us with a game that copy-pastes only what it shouldn't have from its predecessor. But even so, the mirrored animations from brother to sister miss the opportunity to imbue either with additional character or intrinsic value. The true split between Evie and Jacob is all to be found in the campaign. Each sequence can be surmised as such. Evie investigates the Peace of Eden and cleans up Jacob's mess. Jacob investigates a particular walk of life in London to sever Crawford Starrick's connection. First it's medicine, then it's buses, then currency, politics, and gangs. Medicine works because it's novel. Buses is fun because Pearl Attaway's character is fantastic. But after that, Jacob's storylines dry up very quickly. Syndicate breaks Unity's hit list plague, though each sequence does end with a knife in someone's throat. The build-up to the showdown is enough for relationships and understanding to blossom. Jacob is able to build a working relationship with Miss Attaway, before discovering her deception all too late. But with time, these clever twists and turns are taken out of play. The relevant characters are stripped of dimensions, culminating in the utter bore that is Jacob's venture into politics. Listening to a Reddit debate while hidden behind a rosebush isn't what I buy Assassin's Creed for, nor is the 24-carat nutcase Mrs. Disraeli who is to drama what the Night King is to fire. Syndicate weakens with time, both in story and in strength, as the shallowness struggles to be offset by the campaign's attempts to make the best of its limited tools, but those attempts are praiseworthy all the same. Syndicate's campaign structure is exemplary next to Unity, and we retain its greatest strength, the assassination missions. Same idea, a black box as the developer likes to call it. You have a grand playing field, loads of enemies and entrances, a target, and multiple opportunities to make that kill more stylish or more accessible. Syndicate improves in nearly every conceivable respect, in due form, quality over quantity being the most obvious. Every instance is stunningly stylized, where Unity's ceaseless sequence of targets to kill left the missions feeling far less diverse. The Asylum is everything you'd expect the horrors of 19th century medicine to be: cruel doctors, patients taken against their will, and a general sense of madness. The Bank of England, the train station, the Tower of London, the theatre, and the Palace of Westminster are equally spectacular, with each theme's influence shining through the opportunities themselves. Tower of London has fake guards and a prison break. The station involves schedules and conductors. The theatre has poisoned drinks and tampered props. In tandem with quality over quantity, Syndicate makes a key systemic change that kept Unity's opportunities from doing their job. In that game, you pursued opportunities completely oblivious to how they'd bear fruit. A distraction you think you've set up could happen immediately, but it might happen later. Maybe you need to trigger a fight. Might only cover your escape. You don't know. In Syndicate, however, you can inspect each opportunity for a readout of exactly how you can set it up and what it'll accomplish. Like I said, quality over quantity, which is why every assassination has a unique kill opportunity, of which none, I'm pleased to say, are broken. Syndicate's polish shines through once again, but this untampered vision of black box design highlights a fundamental problem that I struggle to conceptualize in Unity. Something you're likely to realize as you kill your way through the campaign is how undemanding most of these assassinations would be if you took them literally, if you chose not to go for the unique kill. In Lambeth Asylum, you have a clean shot on Elliotson as soon as you make it to the lower right corridor. Rational thinking says kill him there and then. A throwing knife to the head. Easy. But wouldn't that feel like cheating myself? I know the unique kill will be more assassin-like, I know getting it will be more challenging and therefore more fun, but it clearly isn't the smartest play. My compulsion conflicts with Jacob's. There's an unimmersive split that way. Besides Lucy Thorne, I can't think of an assassination in which pursuing the unique kill wouldn't be a needless risk and a complete waste of time from the assassin's perspective. From your perspective, you might be similarly taken by the idea that going for every opportunity is the most effective way to play. This is almost universally wrong given how much risk is associated with each one, a fact I believe the game should have made clear. If you have the infiltration opportunity, going for distraction is usually pointless. Not much reason to get the lower guards to take a hike when you've got a ticket onto the 4th floor. If you're looking for a comedy reel of potato-brained opportunities like in Unity, Syndicate can't provide. Its sole moment of slapstick dumbassery was in Westminster. There's a security chief out in the heavily patrolled courtyard. If you kidnap him, you can walk right by the 2 guards blocking the house entrance. Brilliant, huh? Yes, brilliant. Except for the fact that there's an infinitely better entrance completely unguarded on the roof, and that kidnapping the chief in the first place is harder than killing the only 2 guards he helps you get past. That's some play-tested shit right there. But it's only Jacob's burden to bear. Evie's lucky enough to get the Tower of London kill, otherwise she's researching the Piece of Eden, getting the Henry Green romance option, and cleaning up Jacob's mess. Unlike Arno and Elise, Jacob's bullshit actually has consequences, which are handily mopped up by his sister. The additional angle to things makes London feel that much more real, and I certainly can't overlook this gem.
That should be rhyming
The quantitative split between Jacob and Evie missions is more or less reasonable. That is, until you hit the game's final third. Sequence 6 is 3 Jacob to 2 Evie, then Sequence 7 is 4 to 2, then Sequence 8 is 4 to 0. Seems unfair, and that's because it is, but the reasoning in my estimation would be what stories Ubisoft had to tell. Syndicate establishes quite firmly that it tells its side plots through Jacob, and its overarching plot through Evie. What's clearly happened here is they've ran out of anything that matters, which leaves us spending nearly all of the game's final third prancing about these frivolous distractions. The politics was a bore because the ideological debate was vapid, and the characters ranged from empty to ridiculous. Maxwell Roth was flamboyant enough to be entertaining and yet a completely predictable waste of time. We're talking about cutscenes that end with a rook trapped in a cage, and we're somehow supposed to be shocked when the leader of the Blighters ends up betraying us. And when it seems Ubisoft tried to correct their error, the one Evie mission in Sequence 9 has you trying to further an Indian political cause. This kind of stuff is what the first third of the game is for. It's like Red Dead Redemption 2, but with more dumb jokes and no fucking redemption. As the clock ticks towards close, Syndicate's story ironically runs out of steam and is dragged out to a thread, coasting only on Crawford Starrick's dipshit cutscenes, where you watch Mr. Bad Guy Villain Man play piano, sip tea, and shoot his minions. If he had a cat to stroke, he'd have the collection. Syndicate, after having spent the last 3 hours entangled in its own web of idiot side plots, leaves us with the smallest clue about the Piece of Eden, one-dimensional characters who give us no reason to care, and a halted hype train for the game's grand finale at Buckingham Palace. To fit in, Lady Evelyn Fried Egg is stuck in a restrictive dress, so restrictive that she is totally incapable of doing anything but kidnapping guards, which she will be doing slowly, painfully, for nearly 15 minutes, because this is the climax of the video game, and as we know, a good climax has the gameplay at its worst. This is also the first time Evie and Jacob will ever work together meaningfully throughout the entire game, which is ironic because it's canonically when they're furthest apart, and ridiculous because it just is. 2 assassins, and the first time that means anything is the final mission of the game. But let's be grateful for what we have, because as soon as Evie is rid of her infernal contraption, it is quite magnificent. Waluigi has located the Shroud of Eden and begins having a grossly incandescent gamer moment. It's a standard fight. Catch is, the Shroud continually heals his wounds. The mechanical element shifts then to the First Civilization security grid that demands you weave your way through the tougher and tougher subsections of the vault to make a play on Starrick. Watching Jacob and Evie continually trade places in danger feels like a ridiculous parody of Avengers Endgame, and that does its work to suppress the drama, but the spectacle is enough to sell the climax. After stabbing Starrick about 10 million times, which isn't something either of these plum sacks should be unfamiliar with, he falls. In saving Evie, Henry Green's threadbare romance reaches a satisfying close. Jacob and Evie heal their relationship, and Queen Victoria knights the 3 of you. Now, a race back to the train. It's dramatic enough to be passable, it's fun enough to be a great time. For what Syndicate is, this is an excellent ending. The modern day concludes directly after in another pre-rendered cinematic. Chris Davis and Rebecca use the Fry's memories to find the Shroud in their time, where a beautifully shot skirmish between the Assassins and Templars play out. Prepare for trouble, make it double. It's Otso Berg and Violet DaCosta, these complete scoundrels from Rogue are back, which is a fantastic way to connect the end of the modern era to the end of the Kenway era. Better yet, it one-ups Unity by actually meaning something. The Assassins lose, the Templars win. And with the Shroud, they're able to advance Unity's Phoenix project to near completion. They intend to recreate a precursor by using the Shroud on John Standish's DNA. And with Violet's conspiracy, that precursor will be Juno. 2 satisfying endings, a fun video game. And yet ultimately, a story that the Assassin's Creed of old, bar the first thanks to the magic of novelty, could never have gotten away with. What's been bugging me over recent times is my lack of confidence in something I said at the start of this series. I said that Assassin's Creed's strength is its stories, and now, having played Unity, Syndicate, and having thought heavily about Origins and Odyssey, I have no idea what I was talking about. You don't play Assassin's Creed for the story. You play it for the world. You play it because London is tantalizing. You play it because ancient Egypt is among the most vibrant, rich open worlds ever created, and it's a pleasure to spend time in it. Not for Crawford Starrick, certainly not for Layla Hassan. This confusion is entirely rooted in time, because when Black Flag came out, my statement was true. If I were to replay Assassin's Creed 2, it wouldn't be for the dynamic encounters or the shitty graphics. It'd be for Ezio and his story. Did you know that Revelations was made in 8 months? Brotherhood in a year? And yet in those microscopic time frames, quality was achieved, memorable stories and atmospheres. The complex visual natures of modern games is only a part of the puzzle. Another is that today, every time AAA games have to be the biggest yet, or compete at a level close to the ever-climbing norm. Odyssey costed $60, just like Unity, but it's 100 times the size. I'm starting to think this is why we observe this trend. In almost every open-world game now, you progress through the world and the campaign is secondary. Some games pull off a brilliant story all the same, but it is a secondary focus, and it often suffers as a result. Make 1,000 quests, decent gameplay, and an addicting progression system. Make it look good and keep people playing. This is the new creed of Assassin's Creed. A brilliant world, satisfactory gameplay, and addicting progression. Anything else is of little consequence. That's why Assassin's Creed Unity can be viewed in retrospect as a fantastic game in spite of its story. But Syndicate? A shame it's set on the Thames, because the name of Syndicate's rot is shallowness, a curse that no glamorous skin could ever hope to break. It pairs shallow movement with shallow combat and expects it to uphold 15 hours of shallow story. The dual assassin concept was ultimately shallow in execution, and execution is shallow in and of itself, in no small part thanks to how shallow customization is too. In a world-based paradigm, you might want to avoid gutting the mechanic you'll use to traverse it. It's an indecipherable enigma, the way we switched from arguably the deepest entry in the franchise to the shallowest in the span of a year, and in the width of the shortest era of Assassin's Creed. In 25 hours of playtime, I got 20 hours of entertainment, but nothing of consequence. Nothing. Until 1888. Whitechapel's Autumn of Terror. My praise for Dead Kings was abundant, but Syndicate's DLC, Jack the Ripper, bolts off the start line with exceptional quality throughout the intro period. Perhaps its most striking idea was Jacob's tone, not the city's. We know him as a brash, reckless, and rather selfish young man, but not here. Here he's afraid, begging the media to stop turning London's monster into a legend, and sending a working girl on her way with a sack of coin. An equally effective reverse card is having us play Jack when we expected to play Jacob. Kill him, hunt him, coward. Jack's insanity isn't subtle, but it's new, it's striking, and it works. Jack trades in fear. Enemies begin confident, but if you use the spikes, the scream, or the brutal takedown, you can progress them through to scared, and then to terrified, at which point they scuttle off. A brutal takedown harkens back to Shadow of Mordor. Hold the button and follow the prompts to pop a guy open like a fucking water balloon. The scream, meanwhile, merely asks that you charge it up. And the spike is an utterly barbaric insta-kill, of which you only get 3. It's a gruesome power trip. You have my attention. But before long, Jack had me gripped. He finds Jacob and holds nothing back. The fight is a foregone conclusion. And just as you're expecting Evie to swing in through the window and turn the tables, nothing. Jack wins. Jack takes the Dead King's philosophy. Base game, but better. With that title drop, we're making a start. With Jacob seemingly brown bread and Jack still on the loose, Evie, who is now a million miles away from her old post in India, rendezvous with Abeline, who I guess got a Dollar Shave Club subscription. Evie soon discovers the scene of Jacob's supposed murder. The lighting is grim, the music is grimmer, and the Sherlock UI sells the suspense to a frightening degree. Blood splatter, fear tools in a box. You piece things together along with Evie. Since the beginning of your control, Evie has had the same brutal takedown ability as Jack, something I initially viewed as an oversight, but in fact was intended. Evie learned fear techniques with Henry, Jacob, and Jack the Lad in India, Kali. Watch as the UI displays Evie's revelation. Kali. She's onto something. Jacob hid a message in an old Indian artifact.
Could he be referring to an unfortunate woman?
The way Ubisoft are building the atmosphere is absolutely exceptional. I never for a second thought the Dead King's magic was anything more than a one-off. I was wrong. Jacob's message draws attention to a hooker named Nellie. Evie follows the trail and finds a Lady Owers. She's Jack's eyes and ears. Nellie is in her custody. We free her, unlock the next batch of side missions, and discover that we can now hire prostitutes. Timely. And greedy. But unlike the previous games, hookers aren't for blending, they're only for distraction. Understandable, were it like Ezio's games you'd render the new kidnap mechanic useless. But as they are, I'd take that sacrifice. Prostitutes are a waste of time, you're universally better off using your own tools. Evie makes her move on Owers without hesitation, arriving in the painted world of Ariamis. Impressive. I didn't think they could top the spectacle of the main game's assassinations, but once again I am proven wrong. You even get a carriage escape. Speaking of which, Jack the Ripper substitutes liberation activities for more relevant side content. My favourite of all was the Carriage of Justice. Mob Rule appears in a city terrorised by Jack, and being idiots, they end up with the wrong man. It's your job to drive him through the outraged London, past jams and enemies, quickly enough to not be detected, slowly enough to not raise suspicion, and carefully enough to not do either of those things. It's a tense challenge. More relevant to Jack's victims, another side mission is the Walk of Shame. You find clients abusing prostitutes, fuck them up, and escort them back to Nellie, with your secondary objective being to publicly shame them. The crowds where you can do so are usually placed in an area controlled by Jack's gang, so it can be surprisingly tough to stay undetected if you want a perfect run. Managing detection, navigation, restraining, and staying non-lethal is serious business. Unfortunately for us, it's also broken business. For some incomprehensible reason, Ubisoft decided to make the abuser targetable in combat, which means half the time you're detected, you'll automatically snap to him in combat and kill him, forcing a restart. A great concept, tainted by a frustrating oversight. Fight clubs in 1888 are similarly afflicted. Jack has repurposed them for torture. The only pain you'll feel is that of still being over-fucking leveled. You were able to choose our power, Ubisoft. Why are these goons still impotent? Worse, in an attempt on the Guinness World Record for most times a weapon animation can be reused in a single game, Jack the Ripper, after having reused the Knuckle Duster animations on the Fight Club, have decided to force you into using the Knuckle Duster for the entire DLC. The weight of this tired repetition is immense. Progressing the story, propaganda comes into play as the murder at Owers Manor is spun as a massacre perpetrated by you. Abeline's thin ice routine cracks, and you lose the police as allies, a narrative touch that has impact on the gameplay, making it all the more engaging. Sweet. Time to find the Spin Doctor. But the spinner's been spun. The media continue to obsessively print Jack's letters because they are told to, under threat of Weaversbrook's son's execution, and Jack's network reaches far and wide, it seems, even offshore. If we can find the son, we can stop the legend. Chances are he'll be in Jack's prison ships. Jack the Ripper is breaking its own bar with this site. I'd enjoy the mission even if there was nothing to do. A row of dead behemoths, each with prisoners starved inside. Follow the trail and you end up on Jeffrey Jackstein's private island. Slaves, hangings, prisoners. They look straight out of Dark Souls. And here we have our second assassination, the Chief Warder. The opportunities are your basic bunch, a distract, a simple way in, and a unique kill. This time you hang the hangman, but what's special is that Jack won't let this stand. After Evie calls the police to the island and rushes off back to London, Jack arrives to silence the witnesses, or anyone that stands in his way. Having full freedom to unleash Jack's violence is a beautiful contrast against the stealth approach you're likely to take as Evie. The kukri is reused for Jack's animations, but anything that isn't fists is fresh, and the knife violence complements the fear mechanic well. There are 3 brutal takedowns total, each so gruesome they set new heights for Assassin's Creed. The suggestions of the warder imply Jacob was responsible for all this, not Jack, and the strain of not knowing where he is takes its toll. The next murder she finds, the next man who tries to stop her. It's a powder keg, and the match is falling.
Monster. You damn monster!
Oi! You're not allowed in here! Evie! Get a hold of yourself! Go! Out!
Who is she? Tell me quickly!
Tell you? By what right? I am an officer of the law. I am not a member of your secret organization.
Listen to me! Jacob knows.
No, you listen to me. I cannot cover for you much longer. All the evidence points to your brother, your order, you. You need to deliver the Ripper's head on a spike soon, or I'm afraid there'll be nothing to stop my men from arresting you in his stead.
You'll have his head, even if it costs me mine.
It's acted beautifully, it's not spoiled by infantile jokes, and it's believable. Edgy, perhaps, but giving Evie a single human dimension to define her beyond a cardboard straight man makes a real difference. You don't have to be dark to be good, but your characters do need to be believable human beings, relative to the world in which you're set, and this DLC is reaching heights Syndicate could only dream of. The following slaughterhouse has you investigating Jack's legacy. These crimes fail in a similar way to Dead King's mandatory enigmas. You basically just press the interact button 9 times and the solution is handed to you. The game continually repeats the, "Oh god, she looks like a fucking squash lasagna, how could you do this, Jack?" routine without providing much context for who these women were at all. At the third scene, things twist a little. This wasn't one of Jack's murders, it was the murder that made him. His mother. When Starrick's men gutted her, Jack was sent to the asylum. Years later, Jacob found him and personally brought him into the Brotherhood. But over time, Jack grew to blame Jacob for his impotence. If the assassins were stronger, perhaps Jack's mother wouldn't have died, and so Jack radicalized a Splinter Cell, which is impressive because they were already radicalized. An interesting take. You get an Arkhamite Scarecrow boss fight before being sent on your way. A great way to end things. But I can't say I'm entirely convinced by Jack. Why in God's name did Jacob bring up an assassin with such insidious mental health issues? I understand such problems may have attracted Jack to an uprising, but it doesn't quite explain what makes Jack the Ripper. All the prostitutes he killed were assassins, but why perform such heinous acts? Why create such a vast and terrible network if he simply means to make the assassins stronger? Then again, do real-life serial killers ever have such a great motive? Then again, do I care about that excuse in a video game? Jack lays the trap for Evie, and so it begins. The lunatics are out, but he's waiting down in the basement, with Jacob as bait. The boss fight hits a high note for the games until now. Jack is unstoppable one-on-one, your only recourse is stealth. But there are 2 caveats. 1, you can only strike from behind, and 2, Jack is lightning fast. It's not unique mechanically, but getting that opportunity is tougher than it seems. A strong fight. But even death can't stop the Ripper. Jack disappears and returns this time with a group of inmates to back him up. Tougher than ever? No. All of a sudden, Jack is as weak as any other boss-type enemy. A short skirmish is all it takes to finish him. No theatrics, no secret plan. Why they chose to end on a phase as weak as this baffles me. It leaves the situation with a sense of anticlimax. With Jack ended, Evie manages to rescue Jacob in time, and Aberline helps you cover up Jack's past affiliation. As for me, I can't help but feel things should have ran deeper. Evie and Aberline act as if they hadn't just been at each other's throats. Jacob says nothing, and Jack's character isn't fleshed out at all, meaning all we're left with is a simple case of unlucky madness. And with the landing unfortunately choked, Jack the Ripper is done. Certainly didn't match Dead Kings in the home stretch, but was overall just as impressive an upgrade. Visually and narratively, Jack the Ripper brings Syndicate to a characteristic close. I cannot judge Jack the Ripper under the same pretenses as Dead Kings. One was an epilogue chapter that everyone received for free. Jack was not. It costs $12 and that's on sale. Ultimately, its greatest flaw is the game it's stuck to. With no new story to prop it up, I wouldn't dream of revisiting London, but I'd go back to Franciard in a heartbeat. Nevertheless, its greatest success was exactly how Syndicate offset that rot. Distribution, entertainment, visuals. In almost every way, from art to believability, Jack puts Syndicate to shame. It's worth the money and your time. Whether the same can be said for the game as a whole is for you to decide. There's plenty here to love, plenty here to hate, and a soul, though misguided, that was born of the best of intentions. Thank you for watching. Special thanks go out to Fabian Flack, Austin Novosel, Caleb Doss, Corbin Davies, Hutch Puppy, Joey9451, Flip Slip Me Dick, Warthol, I Know Lucky, Blake Noland, Effectfully, Mardy, Mr. T with some Tea, Gurniel, John Lemley, Bishop Nelson, Benjamin Carter, Dominic Jaworski, Lex Williams, L. Hudson, That's for the Birds, Brendan McDonald, Keshav Rangan, Daniel, Jason Vickery, Mark, Brandon Harris, Alcis Wild, Attila, Nathan, Rakin Hawk, Justin, Joshua Yeend, Cameron Bowen, Separatu, Uriara Heap, Devontae Williams, Mataphobia, Sean Oddy, Dan Walker, Yeet Lord, Brendan, The Last Great Opium Den, Binyamin, Bozian22, Hey I'm Tim, Joshua W. Schreiner, Sai, Shade, Quarter Gamer, Ballistic Rainbow, Chance Tucker, Drop ZZ, Combat Wombat, Juris Purin's Holy Shift, Andre Baltuta, Noah B. Satterley, Leon Cuttendall, and Abby.